Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for letting me come back and be a part of tonight's program. I sure love being a part of Lifelines. It's a great program. And I saw you guys come up for chips, but how many times, people, this is your first time ever at Lifelines? Let me see your hands. First time ever at Lifelines. Right on, right on. Let's give all the newcomers one more hand. Great job being here tonight, guys. So cool. Well, like Randy said, I really love being able to speak and have the opportunity to share some ideas, and I'm going to share some practical ideas tonight about your life and your recovery. But I have to start with sort of a humble awareness that I feel really, really honored to be here. And not just honored to be here, I feel that it's miraculous that I'm here. Every time I get to be a part of what's happening here at the Crossing, I'm reminded that 10 years ago, last March, I was laying broken and bloody about 300 yards from here. I was in a horrible accident on the 55 freeway, just right over there. My wife and I were driving home from Triangle Square, and an accident happened right in front of us. We pulled over to the side of the road. I got out. She was on the phone calling 911. I said, "Hey, are you guys okay?" Standing in the shoulder. 911 is on its way. I saw that accident was horrible. Is everybody all right? And just right at that moment, a third car swerved into the shoulder and struck me. Threw me 60 feet down the freeway. I was totally, instantly unconscious. I woke up several minutes later just lying perfectly still on the side of my face. I can still remember the wet feeling of blood and asphalt on my face as I just lied there. Scared to move. Tons of people were circled around me, and I kept saying, am I paralyzed? Am I drunk? What happened? And I said that over and over again. I later found out that's a part of what happens when our brains go in shock. We get in these systems and we just start repeating the same thing over and over again, not knowing how badly I was hurt. I was laying there, the ambulance came, they cut all of my clothing off to access my wounds. I had a compound fracture in my femur. My femur bone was coming through my thigh, missed my artery by a millimeter or I would have bled out instantly. Put on the gurney, rushed to the hospital where I ended up spending 1 month in the hospital. The first 8 hours I was there, I was in such excruciating pain and I had lost so much blood that they couldn't give me any pain medicine. So I'm lying there literally in and out of consciousness based on pain. I had road rash, and those of you who've been on bikes, you know what road rash means. All on the side of my face. I'm lucky I still have my eye. People come up to me, people I know, they're like, "Hey Mark, you have some dirt right here." I go, "Nope, that's the 55 freeway right there." Little souvenir I got. All on my back, on my face, road rash. And if you don't know what road rash is, it's when you actually have the asphalt embedded in your skin. The treatment is the burn unit. So I'm at the burn unit, still not yet on pain meds, being scrubbed clean. Literally scrubbing the asphalt out of my body. Except they missed a piece. Needless to say, that left me on a long, long journey of physical recovery that had all sorts of spiritual battles, battles with chemical dependency, battles with emotion, battles with depression, battles with wrestling with God. What the heck? I'm a good guy, right? What's going on? Anyhow, out of that, I'm so blessed to be a counselor now. I also have this program called Balanced Life Leadership, which is my table over here. If you'd love to find out more, I'd love to have you fill out or assign your email over there. I want to send you my full testimony that I gave on a podcast just last week, and would love to send that out to you if you give me your email address. And now, as a result of that, I have the honor to be able to go to whatever opportunity befalls me to encourage whomever it is I get to speak to, live well. We are honored to be here. This specifically, tonight, Friday night at Lifelines, this is a good place to be, right? This is a good place to be. Everybody do this. Hey, there was a question 10 years ago if I'd still be able to do that. And I can, and I'm stoked, and I'm happy about that. So everybody, it's great to be here. I'm honored to be able to be a part of what's happening here and to encourage you guys tonight. So I want to talk about step 9 for a few minutes and hopefully give you some real practical tools. If you're a person who takes notes, I'm going to give you 5 ideas about step 9 that will really be an influence as you're moving forward working your steps. If you don't mind, show of hands, how many people have worked step 9? Okay, at some point you're either working it or have worked it in the past. Awesome. Okay, so hopefully this is some positive review for you. Others, hopefully it's some practical tools to prepare you for when step 9 comes around. Here's the first idea about step 9, is that it is an action step, okay? Step 9 requires action. So many of the steps leading up to here are about our own contemplation. Sure, we're taking action with pen and paper. We're taking action with prayer. But step 9 requires action outside of myself to go and interact with specific individuals. We read it earlier, to make direct amends whenever possible, unless to do so would harm others, them or others or them. Brain injury. Did I tell you I had a brain injury 10 years ago? So this is an action step about personal growth and personal development. And there's a reason that it's step 9 and not step 1 or step 2. I talk to people all day long who come in fresh in recovery, first 30 days under their belt, they got their chip, they're zealous, and they're ready to call everybody from their mom to their 5th grade teacher and say, oh, I'm so sorry that I was a jerk and I got loaded, da, 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 da. And here's the thing. It's step 9 for a reason. If you called your friends early on, your family early on, your teachers early on, your grandparents early on, and said, I'm so sorry, they say, yes, you are a sorry SOB. I got a word for you, right? So we have to do the first 8 steps on purpose before we get to step 9. And even though we're starting recovery and we're zealous and we're stoked and we're getting our chips and we're excited, we got to walk the course before us. We have to not only wait because there's a systematic approach, but we are preparing our hearts and our minds for lasting recovery, correct? So here's an idea of why it's 9 and not 1 or 2. Because how many times is it possible to say, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Grandma, I'm sorry, Mrs. Randolph, my 5th grade teacher, and they said, I've heard that 1,000 times. Infinite. I need to know in my heart, with my higher power, that when I'm doing step 9, it is sincere, it is authentic, and it's for real and lasting. And so I need to do the preparatory work early on. There's a great quote from Abraham Lincoln who says, if I have 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 7 hours sharpening the axe. So there's something about preparing our minds and our hearts, doing the hard work of recovery so that when we do our step 9, it is with lasting benefit. So one of the ways that I love to coach people to prepare themselves for action is a simple exercise that I call YXO, okay? YXO. And YXO is kind of like the YMCA. You guys remember the YMCA? You know, the village people singing the classic song from skate night, you know, skating, doing the YMCA. And so it's Y, but it's X, and then O, which actually stands for out. I guess I could go O, but O for out. And the idea is, yes, why yes, I am open to receiving goodness, blessings, kindness, love, and favor into my life. And you call it your higher power. You call it your understanding of God, and you say, yes, I am open to receiving. And then you cross your heart and say, I cross my heart and acknowledge within my heart, I have received love, kindness, goodness, and favor in my life. And then out, we give out of that love and goodness that we've received to others. So everybody stand up and do this with me. Stand up. Stand up right where you're at. Let's do a quick YMCA, YXO exercise. So everybody loosen up a little bit, roll those shoulders out. This is one of our parts of preparation, a tool for preparation. Arms wide open and up. Yes, I am open to receiving. Let me hear you. Yes. I cross my heart and acknowledge I have received love, goodness, and other great stuff. Perfect. And out of that love, I give to others. Right on. Grab a seat, guys. Woo! Okay, so that's your homework assignment. Once a day, do a YXO exercise, all right? Can you guys remember that? Will you guys do that? That's a further way that we're preparing our hearts and preparing our minds to continue to say, I'm open and ready to give. If I go and give an amends or give anything out of selfishness or out of obligation, is it going to be fruitful? No. Is it going to be resentful? Yeah. So ironically, if I'm doing step 9 because I'm supposed to, then I'm just basically fueling more resentment. I'm supposed to do this. I've really got to do the hard work to prepare myself, because what step 9 is about admitting that we were wrong. It's about owning our part, repaying debt, and basically saying, I want to do my part to see if I can heal any relationship that I've broken. So that's a hefty thing. We cannot do that lighthearted. There's a great verse in the Bible, James chapter 2, verse 16, and it says, faith without works is what? It's dead. Now, you guys will have to help me out a little bit, but I think there's some parallel like this. If we said recovery without amends is what? It's certainly incomplete. It's certainly short of what it could be. So in the same way faith without works is dead, so recovery without amends is incomplete and most likely dead. So we have to be ready to say, I'm wanting to give amends. I'm wanting to make proper and healthy amends. Well, here's the irony. We think we're ready to go do amends, and a lot of people don't know what it is and what it isn't. So it's important to really pause for a second and say, I have to acknowledge what it is. As I joked earlier, if we just think amends is saying I'm sorry, we're not going to get a full amends. One, the person's going to not really receive it, and two, we're probably not fully ready to make it right. Because amends is simply that. Just look at the word. It's making a mend. If I broke something, I need to mend it, correct? And so I need to make a mend to the thing that I have broken. What have I broken? I've broken trust. I've broken my word. I've broken relationships. I've broken law. I've broken, you name it. We have to say, I'm ready to make amend for what I have done. As we look at literature in the big book, what we hear and see is this idea of direct amends. So direct amends basically means, as much as possible, I want to make it eye to eye, face to face, one to one, right? That's ideal. We want to do that. And as soon as I say that, I know some of you guys are thinking, if I make a direct amends, that dude will kill me, right? Okay, I know some of you guys. And likewise, I had an attorney client early on in recovery. You guys, I had this crazy experience. I got to work in this treatment center that was like, I won't say its name, but it was like the Ritz-Carlton, okay? I mean, like massage and personal chef, and, it was great to work there because I could go and have a little shrimp scampi for my lunch, while I'm working there. And I worked with this attorney, and this attorney's like, Mark, hey, listen, man, I come from a world where there have been hundreds of millions of dollars in litigation where I was overseeing the case and I was loaded. What do you think a judge will say if they find out that their counsel was loaded during all of those hearings? All of those hearings would be overturned, and literally hundreds of millions of dollars. This guy was like corporate law. All of those things would literally ruin companies because of me and because of my doing. So there was this idea of, gosh, how do I go forward and make a direct amends when it could have that sort of consequence? I know some of you are thinking that now. And so some of you, what I would say is when you make your step 8, and hopefully, we know step 8 comes before step 9, and we have this list of amends that we need to make, we might make a second list. And this is sort of off the cuff, and you guys can use this if it works well with you and your sponsor. But the second list has 4 parts. The first part is amends that I'm ready to make right now. Okay? No problem. I can do it right now. The second is, later. I'll make the amends later. The third part of the list is maybe. And the fourth part of the list is never. Okay? So 4-part list, break it all down. And here's the idea that I've heard from wise counsel on this. Because you're concerned there will be consequences, you need to move forward anyway. You move forward with the right nows. You set up your appointments, you have your meetings, you do your right now face-to-face amends. Then you go ahead and realize I can move forward to my laters. You start working the laters. You continue to work the laters and you realize the power of growth of doing healthy amends. And soon enough, you're able to go ahead and do the maybes. And more times than not, you can actually do the nevers. Remember, making amends is doing what I need to do to be a person who's healthy in my recovery. The third idea in sharing with you about step 9 tonight is that amends in step 9 is about growth, not my guilt, right? It's about growth, not my guilt. Imagine a guy who, as a part of his addiction, had multiple affairs outside of his marriage. And he's working the steps and decides to go and make amends and does it a little like a shotgun style and goes to his wife and says, hey, honey, here's 100 women that I slept with during my addiction in our relationship. And here's all the things we did, and here's all the things that were this and that and this and that. And so I just wanted to share that with you because that's my step 9, and I had to tell you that. And I feel a lot better. And she's like, you just gave me a step 9 dump, like, hello. We wrecked her, or this dude could wreck her in the process. So there needs to be that wisdom that says, when I'm making my amends, am I causing harm to others? So I need to be able to be cognizant of the idea that it's about my growth, not just me alleviating my guilt, and I can't cause harm. And like I was talking about earlier with the attorney or with somebody who might want to come after you, an amends is to make things right, but knowing that there may be consequences, we may not be able to make those direct amends. And ultimately, it's wonderful if we can, because as Randy said, that's when we begin to experience the lasting miracle of long-term recovery and inner sobriety. But when we can't make those direct amends, we have to begin to say, well, if I make those amends, the consequences would be too harmful even to myself. Remember the golden rule in the Bible? Jesus says, love God, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So we forget the idea that there's an appropriate expression of self-care. There's an appropriate expression of self-love when we're actively loving God or trying to love others. So we have to pause and say, is this direct amends going to be harmful or hurtful to me? I like to say, it's called an amends, not that I'm going to become a martyr, right? I don't need to become beat up or crucified in making these amends. I don't need to be a masochist and take my lashings from this person who's so angry at me. If we think that that's going to happen as we move towards our step 9, we've got to work personally with our sponsor, maybe with a counselor, to figure out what ways do we make amends that are actually helpful and what amends might actually be hurtful when we're doing this. The fourth idea that I want to share with you about making amends and working our step 9 is understanding living amends. You ever heard that term before? Living amends? And the whole idea of a living amends specifically comes into the conversation when we no longer have the ability to make that direct amends that we would hope to make. And so a living amends basically says, I'm going to continue to live my life better or different, in fact, the exact opposite of the way that I was living it when I was hurting others and when I was causing harm and brokenness in my life and in my world. And so the idea of a living amends is something that we want to do on a regular basis that's a lasting life change. Tell you about a client I had, and I think you guys know the rules with clients and confidentiality. Of course, I can't say his name or the exact details, but I'll call him Jason, a guy, he was early 30s. He was a military vet, came back from the Middle East and served in combat there. And he'd already struggled with addiction before he left, and he came back with addiction and PTSD. So it was a strong twofer. The guy was angry. The guy was addicted. The guy was very, very destructive in his being. Well, thank God he found sobriety, he found God, he got clean and sober, and really, honestly, through this discipline in military, became very regimented in how he was working his program and really earnestly committed to it. And what he found is when he got to step 9, he realized that the expanse of his anger had such a wake behind him to really even identify and make a list of the specific strangers that he'd brawled with in bars or women that he'd abused in different relationships, which is too great. And so he said, I've done as much as I can do, and now I need to accept what is called a living amends and make this lasting life change hereafter to not cause harm anymore. Practically and specifically, the way it worked. He lived here in Orange County. He took the train into LA every day for work. And he used that time as a meditative place for prayer and preparation. And on the train ride into work, he would spend significant amount of time quieting his heart, quieting his mind, and praying, and specifically having a mantra that said, as I go into work today, may I be a person who has good character as I do my work. May I be a good manager of the people who work under me. May I be a good employee to the people that I work for. And every day he went to work, and that was his mantra. And he actually did very well in work. Like I said, he was a disciplined guy. He went back and finished his schooling as a result of the GI Bill. He had money to finish school, and he continued to move up in his work and in his company. He had a long train ride home. And the train ride home, at this point in his life, he had a relationship that he was committed to, had recently gotten married. He had a daughter from a previous relationship. And riding home in that train ride, every day he said, as I go home today, may I be present with my family. May I be a good man when I walk in the door. May I be a good husband to my wife. May I be a good father to my daughter. That daily activity allowed him to move away from that habitual practice of anger that came from PTSD and from the addiction that was unsettled. A powerful life that we can live when we make these amends, so much more than direct one-on-ones, but the living amends and how we're living our lives on the daily. The last idea that I want to share with you guys is simply that step 9 and the action of directly making amends is a powerful step in personal growth and personal development. As I said, I've got this program over here called Balanced Life Leadership. And really what that is me coming out of 10 years of being a counselor, working one-on-one with people in my office, hearing people's struggles, hearing people's failures, hearing people's desires to grow. And so often those desires to grow were shortchanged because they weren't feeling balanced in their life. They were out of sync with this, or their finances were out of control, or their emotions were off the chart, or their relationships were a mess. They had no way to really know how to build themselves up as a working professional. That was all new for them. And so really what I decided and came up with is there are 8 components of life that we all need to be healthy, successful adults. And from that, it's this balanced life model. And I work with individuals, I work with groups, I work with companies, with teams to basically say, how do we become healthy, whole people? Realizing as we become healthier, whole people, we're automatically going to be better partners in our relationship, better parents to our kids, better workers in our companies, or whatever our roles are. And so that's the whole ambition behind that. But from that, over and over again, what I kept hearing people say is, I want a better life. Anybody identify with that? I want a better life. I hear people say that over and over and over again. And what I realize is that if you want a better life, if you want to be in a position where you want more things attracted into your life that are better for you and are a better aspect of who you are, then what you have to do is be a better person. If I want a better life, I need to be a better person. If I want better things to come into my life, I need to be better in how I'm interacting within my life. And so again, that's, I think, a huge step or aspect of step 9 for us. That by working a healthy step 9, we are confronting those demons head on. We're going to those dark places in our past where we say, there was a lot of pain back there and I caused a lot of damage, but I want a better life. And so I'm willing to be that better person. It's a huge part of step 9. It's a huge part of all the steps. Developing this self-development program, I studied lots of self-help models, and there is nothing like the 12 steps as far as a systematic approach to whole life recovery. And if specifically you're here for your addiction of alcohol or drugs or other substances, that's awesome. My friends, there's a little secret. The 12 steps work for everybody. So you can tell your friends and your mom and your dad and your grandma and your grandpa and your auntie and your 5th grade teacher, Miss Randolph, hey, you should work the 12 steps too because it's good for us all. You don't have to tell them that, but you can tell Mark said it's good for them all. And it's good for everybody. And the hope is that all of us will continue to say, I want a better life. I want to be a better person. And I bless you guys in that journey. Thanks so much for letting me share tonight. God bless you guys.